Sparta didn't train soldiers, it manufactured suffering on purpose, and what they learned still works. Between age 7 and 30, a Spartan boy wasn't raised by his family. He was conscripted into the agoge, a state-run machine designed to strip away comfort, teach obedience through pain, and forge what the Spartans believed was the only acceptable version of a man. No padding, no mercy, no alternative. The decision to build this system wasn't sadistic theater, it was strategic math. Sparta faced a permanent threat. They were outnumbered. Helots, enslaved peoples, vastly exceeded free Spartans. One rebellion could end everything. So the state made a calculation: invest total control over male psychology early, and you get a permanent warrior class that won't crack under pressure. Exhibit 1, the curriculum itself. Boys received minimal food intentionally. Hunger was a feature, not a bug. They were encouraged to steal, but if caught, the punishment wasn't execution. It was shame. A Spartan who stole poorly was worse than a criminal. He was incompetent. The state wanted cunning, not compliance. Exhibit 2, physical conditioning that sounds invented. 7-year-olds trained daily in wrestling, running, and combat. They wore minimal clothing year-round, even in winter. They slept on reeds they'd gathered themselves. Soft beds were forbidden. The goal was visceral. Your body stopped signaling weakness as an option. Exhibit 3, and this is where it gets darker. Older boys presided over younger ones. Bullying wasn't a failure of the system, it was the system. Subordination to authority, especially arbitrary authority, was the lesson. If you can endure humiliation from someone who holds power, you can endure anything a real enemy throws at you. Here's the cost they paid: psychological scars. Sparta produced soldiers, yes, but also a culture frozen in adolescence. Vulnerability was lethal. Emotional expression was weakness. Love existed, but it couldn't be shown. The agoge didn't just teach resilience, it taught that resilience required the death of your inner self. But and this is what the Stoics understood: there's a line between necessary hardship and self-destruction. Marcus Aurelius never attended an agoge. He read about it, and he made a different choice. He embraced difficulty without surrendering his humanity. The Stoic lesson isn't endure everything without flinching. It's endure what genuinely matters and surrender what doesn't. Epictetus, himself a slave, taught that some things are in your control: your judgment, your effort, your response, and most things aren't. Sparta got the first part right, they failed the second. So what actually transfers to your life? Sparta's insight: discomfort is information, not injury. When you're hungry, cold, or afraid, you learn something true about yourself. You stop being a passenger in your own mind. That's real. But Sparta's era, they believed suffering itself was the goal. The Stoics knew better. Suffering is a teacher, not a destination. You seek it out strategically: cold showers, delayed meals, difficult conversations, not because pain is sacred, but because it reveals what you're actually made of. The agoge produced unbreakable soldiers. Stoicism produces unbreakable humans. The difference? Spartans broke themselves and called it strength. Stoics bend under pressure and call it wisdom. One shatters, the other endures. The practical move: start small. Pick one discomfort that serves a purpose, not random suffering, purposeful hardship. A cold shower because you're building mental toughness. A delayed meal because you're learning hunger isn't an emergency. A difficult conversation because you're practicing courage. Notice what happens, not the pain. Notice your mind. Notice how you narrate the discomfort. Notice what you tell yourself. That's where Stoicism lives, not in the hardship itself, but in your judgment about it. Sparta lasted nearly 4 centuries because the agoge worked. But it worked only in narrow conditions: war, hierarchy, obedience. The moment those conditions shifted, Sparta collapsed. Rigidity breaks, flexibility survives. That's the final lesson. The agoge taught one kind of resilience: the ability to absorb punishment without breaking. But true resilience, Stoic resilience, is the ability to adapt, to preserve your judgment even when circumstances are terrible, and to know the difference between what you can control and what you can't. Sparta broke boys to make soldiers. The Stoics understood something harder. You become unbreakable not by hardening yourself against the world, but by understanding which battles are actually yours to fight. That's a decision you make every single day. The agoge is history, but its lesson isn't. Discomfort, chosen deliberately, reveals who you are. That's not Spartan, that's timeless. And unlike Sparta's rigid doctrine, It scales to any life, your life, right now, in whatever discomfort you're actually facing. Subscribe for weekly deep dives into how ancient philosophy solves modern pressure, because the Stoics knew things about resilience we're still learning.